Open the meeting, please. This is to advise those present at this meeting of the Board of Education of the Pinelands Regional School District in the County of Ocean that adequate notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act. The notice has been posted in the Board of Education office, junior high school, and high school buildings. The notice was also mailed to the press of Atlantic City and filed with the municipal clerks of Bass River Township, Eagleswood Township, Little Lake Harbor Township, and the Borough of Tuckerton. Roll call, Mr. Brown.
All right, Mr. Bonnicky. Here. Mr. Williams.
Here.
Ms. Hannadel.
Excellent.
Mr. Kubricki.
Here.
Mrs. McVeigh.
Here.
Ms. Palladino. Ms. Pakakua.
Yes.
Mrs. Chambers.
Here.
And Mrs. Ernst.
Yes, here. All right, may I have a motion, please, to go into executive session just to discuss matters as listed below: negotiations, attorney-client communications, and personnel for approximately 1 hour.
Motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. We are in executive at
6:03 p.m.
7:04, okay. All right, moving along. Approval of the agenda. Mr. Brown, Yolanda, you may have to help me out here because we are not going to approve it as is, correct?
We will do the
We're
pledge of
removing
allegiance.
something.
Yes.
Go.
Use that line item.
Just say the line item?
Yeah. Get to that.
Okay, all right.
We opened the meeting,
We did.
our flag.
You're right. Thank you, Mr. Bonnicky. We all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Bonnicky.
Also,
I can
yeah.
always count on you.
Betty Ann McVeigh also highlighted the,
Thank you,
I
Betty
was
Ann.
trying to give you a sign. It
Oh.
wasn't that my trigger was gone bad.
and I love you.
All right, now may I have a motion to approve the agenda? All righty, let's go.
So made.
Thank you, Betty Ann. Karen? All those in favor? Opposed?
All ayes.
All right, moving on to item number 6, approval of the minutes. We have items A and B, open session and closed session for the March 20th meeting. We have a motion, please.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Is this roll call or just,
We can do all ayes or nays.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yes.
Opposed?
I have to abstain.
Right. Okay, and I think, Mr. Kubricki, were you out the 20th, somebody else was out the 20th of March. Somebody else was missing.
Jack.
I believe that was me.
Yeah.
Okay. All
I
right,
think so.
so you're gonna abstain?
I support the minutes that you had. I mean, you see where I was. I don't believe I was here.
All right, we're off to.
Oh, no, my son was home. I was not here.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
All right, it's been a long day.
The
Thank you, Jeff, so you're abstaining.
The minutes show
I can vote yes
that
still,
Mr.
can I?
Bonnicky arrived at 7:04.
Did I read them? Sure.
So you need
I'm not in them.
you need to abstain from the executive, but not the regular because you were here at 7:04.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't here.
So what's gonna be?
Then I will abstain on 6A and B because that's the 20th and I wasn't here.
Okay, thank you.
You were here.
I've
Mr.
read them.
Bonnicky. Okay.
I just read, the minutes right here show that you were here at 7:04 on the 20th.
So, there's a possibility that I attached the wrong minutes from the prior month, because that's the month you would, the meeting before that, you arrived late, so I might have attached the wrong minutes to the meeting.
I didn't think you were here because Cody was gone.
On time you recorded me. Thank you.
All right, well, let's just move on from that. All right, turning it over to the report of the superintendent and the superintendent's update. Thank you, Dr. Cooley.
I was thinking Three Stooges.
If you want, it's short.
Focus. And focused.
Sure.
Thank you. Wait for this to come on. Mr. Kubricki had asked that I put together some information on high school start times. It's a very short presentation, but it starts with discussion. Once it comes on. He wasn't here when I originally had put this together, so I told him we'd put it off a month. All right, high school start times. It's difficult to see, sorry about that. Well, I'm just going to read you some of the highlights of this. In April of 2017, there was a study done, and some of the facts of that study are as follows. They did find that having a late start time had benefits of adequate sleep for adolescents, but there were obstacles and challenges. one being student transportation, after-school activities, including athletics and childcare. However, the study did find that there is definitely the importance of sleep for adolescents, and this was middle school, high school students, and there were significant benefits and outcomes when junior high and high school students had later start times, even if it was very minimal. So I did get together some local data. I surveyed some of the local school districts, and this is the feedback that I got. So Point Pleasant Borough, they have a rotating drop schedule, and they start at 7:50. They have a period 0 for students that opt to take that, and that starts at 7:10. They do have a rotating schedule, so every day is not the same for them. It would be difficult to do that here with our current contract and the way that the schedule is set up. Point Beach, which is close to that, starts at 8 o'clock. Lacey begins at 7:05, and one of the things the superintendent told me there was she had a difficult time changing that start time because they tier with the elementary schools, similar to what we do here. Central starts at 7:40. They were trying to start later than that, but they went to a block schedule, and they have to coincide with the vocational school. I do have a sample of what that looks like here. I know it's difficult to see, but the teachers sign in at 7:15, the students arrive at 7:25, homeroom's at 7:30, and their first period is at 7:40. And you can see, once again, it's one of those rotating schedules, but they had to coincide their block scheduling with the vocational schools. So it was difficult to change it any later. A pilot study is being done. Former Governor Cody is doing a pilot program set for the fall of 2020 if this bill that he's proposing is put into law, and it would require later start times for junior high and high schools. Some of the challenges that we would face at Pinelands would be the sending districts, number one, and the feedback from some of the parents was babysitting. Oftentimes the junior high, high school students go in first, parents are still home, and then these students are getting off the bus with the younger ones who go in later, and they're there with them for babysitting purposes. The biggest one financially for us would be the tiered busing. So if Pinelands junior high and high school were to start later, we would basically have to flip-flop with the elementary schools, and they would have to start much earlier. Another thing that we have to consider is sports and activities, not only for our own students, starting later, getting done much later, but we are at the bottom of Ocean County. It already takes us long to get to the other school districts. If we were to start later, many of our students would have to actually leave their last period class to get to an activity on time. And then, of course, there's contractual obligations. And right now, for the next 3 years, we do have to abide by the schedule that's put forth in our contract, and it's difficult to have flexibility with that. So really, the board is just going to have to consider what the next steps are. Do we want to wait for the pilot program to give us some more data, or do we want to have a discussion and look at this further, maybe over the summer months, and see if this would be a possibility for us moving forward?
So the pilot program ends when? Do you know?
The pilot program, if the bill is approved, is going to start in the fall, Kim. So I have to find out if it's even approved, then it would start in the fall. Any other questions from the board on that? Okay.
Thank you, Dr. McCool.
I do have more in my update.
All right. Also on my update, the high school junior high configuration and start time. This has been a question from some of the community members. The start times are going to remain the same for both buildings, but the 9th grade will be going to the high school next year. So the junior high will consist of 7th and 8th grade. Another thing that has been on the radar and a concern with some of the community members is the bog. And I wanted to give an update to the board on that. I have received a letter recently from the Department of Dam Safety, and the letter was addressed to the school district, the township, and the county, all being owners of the dam, requiring us to not only repair it, but to completely replace it. So I did get a response from the township attorney saying that they do not own any part of it and are not responsible for it, and that the county owns it. A couple days later, after that, I got an additional letter from that same attorney saying the county owns it and the school district, but they're not taking responsibility for it. So I have reached out to our attorney and have asked for some guidance on this, because unfortunately, if we are required to completely replace it and not just fix it, it's quite expensive. I'm also going to have another engineer come out that we can look to and see what estimate they give us, because right now all we got was an estimate from the township engineer, and we got an estimate from a local construction company to fix it, which is not very costly. But if the state's going to require us to completely replace it, I do need some more information on that. So we are moving forward. I did get some very great feedback from community members. You know, anything they need, they want to help, and everyone's just concerned. So we are moving forward and trying to get that done. Mrs. Lippenwallner is having a meet and greet this Thursday at 6 o'clock in this room. If anyone's interested in coming out and meeting with her and asking her questions, please come out and do that. On the agenda tonight, you're going to see two positions I want to talk about. The first one is a safety officer position. So one of the things we're considering for next school year is having our own in-house safety officer, which would be a retired police officer that could carry a firearm, but would be our employee. I'd like to get the job description approved tonight, but I have reached out multiple times to Chief Busby, and I'm waiting on a meeting with him and Nick to kind of talk about the specifics of that and what role would we still have with the local police department, and what, you know, relationship would we have with them, or would we just be completely in-house. So I'd like to get the job description approved, but I do want to wait and meet with Chief to get some more information on the logistics completely on that.
So why would you do that?
So we would do that, that's a great question, because it's a lot cheaper. And, you know, the employees that we're paying, the SROs are wonderful, but they're full-time employees with benefits. And these, if we have a retired officer, we wouldn't have to pay for the benefits, and we would have them in-house as our employee.
Is there some concern that they're not active young cops, you know, who are actively?
I wouldn't have that concern.
No.
I think it's
That's-
happening a lot in a lot of districts. We consulted with a few when we started looking into this. More and more districts, as they're facing budget cuts, or this is one of the changes you're seeing.
I've gotten a lot of information from Southern and Tom's River, and they're going more towards this model. But as I said, I'd like to have the job description approved, but at this point, I still want to get some more information from Chief.
I'd like to do more information too. I think the township has really been reasonable and very supportive of our district with the cost that they bill us for these individuals.
And I think that's what we can present to the board, is that cost analysis, to see what would it would cost to have, you know, all SROs through the township for some of our people, all of our people, but I'll put that together.
Currently, what percentage of the salary do we pay?
You know, and Nick and I were talking about this today.
It's not defined in our agreements as a set percentage of the salary. I think knowing what their salaries are, I would guess we're somewhere in the 10/12ths. We have them exclusively for 10/12ths of the year. So I'd imagine we're somewhere around that number, or less than that if the city's been very fair with us in the past. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're paying less than that, 10,000.
We'll put that all into the cost analysis to see what the side-by-side looks like.
Our agreements just specify a dollar amount, not percentage.
Right.
Okay.
You
So
have
at
a
this
meeting?
point, it's just a position description.
Yes.
It may or may not be filled, and there'll be more discussion. on it.
Exactly, right. We're just approving the position tonight, the posting. Not the posting, the position, excuse me.
And do you have a meeting set up at this point?
We've been playing email tag for the last few weeks, and I think he's away for a couple days, but by the next board meeting, I'll have that information. The other position on there is, and I know there's been some questions on the Q&A that I addressed, but we'll talk about it again. It's the Program Coordinator of Autism and Behavior Disabilities. This is a teacher position. It's a teacher that would teach less periods, but then the other periods, they would help coordinate the autistic and behavior disability programs so we can expand them. We already talked as a board about the behavior program and how, you know, there's going to be some changes next year for those students. to make sure that we're in compliance and that, the students are getting their electives. More importantly, we want to expand the autism program to make sure that we're meeting all of the needs of those students. And we can bring in maybe some out-of-district placements from other school districts and service them. So we'll have a teacher that can help out with that a couple periods a day. So it's still a teacher position.
So would that be a current teacher?
In-house posting only.
Yes.
Yes, not a new position. That's a good question.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, I have graduation. I just want to let the community know that Mr. Bannon is sending out a letter that's going to go out tomorrow. And he is sending it a little bit early because we want to give parents a heads up for graduation this year. Because it's only going to be held outside, there's going to be a rain date. So if it's it's going to be raining on the date that we have scheduled, which I believe is the 17th, and it's going to take place the next day. So I just want to make sure parents are well prepared that if they have family flying in, that it could take place on the following day.
And will we have a set time by when we will make that call, so that we're not making that call as people are already in transit?
Well, the weather changes, especially at that time of the year. So it's going to be, we don't want to make the call too soon and have people sitting out in the rain. So,
I don't want to make it too late either.
right, we're hoping maybe
I
for
have
it's a Monday,
experienced that.
so we're hoping maybe for the Friday before we can gauge that.
I just even meant that day.
That, yeah.
Oh, that
So that we're
day,
not
yes.
making that call
Last
at
minute,
5
right.
PM for a 6 PM graduation.
Right, now we'll make it as soon as possible, but I'll speak with the administration about that. Mrs. Ernst had asked for an update on the random drug testing. We're gonna do that at the May meeting, which is only in a couple weeks. I just wanted to make sure she didn't think we forgot. And the other thing I'm gonna ask Mrs. Lichtenwaller to do at the June meeting is give her an update on her goals for the upcoming school year. And the last thing is, I am going to be starting a parent advisory group. So parents that have concerns and want to be on a group that can share some of the thoughts from the community, those parents that are very active on social media and really have, great things to say and a perspective, I'm going to be starting a parent advisory group. So if any parents are interested, they can email me, but more information will come out on that. And then I do have a couple things. There were questions on the website. I'm going to summarize because it appears that we got multiple questions from maybe the same person, but no one left contact information, so I was unable to get back to them. So I'm going to summarize the answers. Some I can't address because it's personnel, but we will be posting for a high school principal. The media centers are not going to be closed. And there's special ed questions that keep coming up that we have addressed. So I do encourage families and parents to come to Mrs. Lichtenwaller's meet and greet on Thursday at 6. Email her or set up an appointment with me or with her directly. And that's all I have.
Any board members have questions?
On that particular report?
Thank you.
Or the other items B, C, D, and E?
Well, no, because
Just
we're going to
A.
move on, just on document police report. Okay. Anybody have questions on the monthly attendance?
Well, if anyone saw my question to Melissa, Dr. McCoy, about Good Friday and the observance of that, as a parent sending a kid to school, not knowing if we afforded that opportunity to provide letters. My son came home, I said, Thursday the 18th, so no, I can be out of school. They're going to school anyway, regardless of observance of the practice or
Nice,
going on
Jeff.
vacation. They have
I don't
today.
think the audience can hear you.
No, so we had, the additional day that the snow day we made up was we had a half day on Good Friday. So some students did send in letters, emails, phone
I'm
calls.
just saying, how did they get wind of that? My son came home on Thursday and said, was it something that we did or didn't put out or just?
It's the same as any religious holiday. If someone is religious and that applies to them, they call the school. Yeah, they could have
So
just.
there's nothing that we would.
No,
say,
no
hey, go
correspondence
home,
went out and
send
said,
them
yeah, right now.
Right, okay.
No.
Like I said, he's going to school regardless. Were there many letters that were received?
No, we didn't, and the attendance wasn't very bad either.
Good.
Okay, any questions on the monthly discipline report?
Yeah, I have more of a comment than a question. Looking at the discipline report for grades 9 to 12, the highest number of infractions at 74 is
Ninth grade.
lateness to school. Okay? Double any other single item, 33. So you're asking yourself, why are students late to school? Is it a purposeful act? I don't think so. I think it's tied to what our presentation was about, the sleep-wake cycle and the circadian rhythm of students who by adolescence can't go to sleep until maybe 11 o'clock. As a parent, you can tell you can go to sleep at 9 o'clock, but they're not going to fall asleep because of the wake-sleep cycle. And getting them up in the morning is just as difficult. So I saw from those 74 discipline infractions that the corresponding discipline was after-school detention. And my concern is that this is a biological condition brought on by the wake-sleep cycle, and maybe we need to revisit, according to policy 5600, the corresponding discipline for being late to school, because I'm not sure that is an appropriate level of discipline after school detention if that biological condition is what is causing the lateness to school. So Dr. McCauley can look at policy 5600, the pupil discipline policy, about the discipline code, and see if she recommends any changes to that.
Well, I did actually have a discipline meeting a voluntary meeting with all the staff. They attended, well attended. I got great feedback from them. Part of that policy is for me to reevaluate the policy and the code every year. So it is something that we're doing through that committee, and I am also going to be reaching out to the students, the student advisory committee, because that's part of the policy also, just to get their feedback. So it's something that's going to be reevaluated every year regardless.
Okay, and I think, again, you need to take a good look at the after-school detention for that discipline infraction, and even whether it should be a discipline infraction. Right now, policy 5240 on tardiness says that if there's a pattern of tardiness, students will be offered counseling to determine the cause of the tardiness. But I think the cause of the tardiness is the sleep-wake cycle predominantly.
Right. All right, and I understand what you're saying, Stephen, and we know this is something, that's very important to you, and are we going to be able to discuss that tonight during the work session as to what direction the board wants to take?
Sure.
Right now, we are, Dr. McCooley is saying that we are reevaluating the discipline codes, et cetera, and what is being weeded out for what particular error. And you are also suggesting then that policy 5240 also be included in that look at.
I think she's doing that now, and I can thank
Right,
Dr.
okay.
McCauley for looking at that
Mhm.
policy and taking a proactive approach to that.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen.
I think it's a really good point, but I can't imagine that since you're cracking down on absenteeism, that maybe that's just another way of being late too. If you can't not come to school, then you might be late. Or it might be something totally different, but,
Or if you're late to school, you might say, oh, heck with it, I won't come at all.
yeah, but you can if you got an absenteeism thing that,
So
Right.
there's a lot.
Well, and I'm sure that in one way or another, and I'm sure that they're gonna look at this as the committee, is that, in those first period classes, second period classes where students are late, that they are possibly in danger of losing credit because of missing those classes. That's why attendance might say, oh, my kid was absent 5 times for period 2, but he didn't miss any of the other classes. So, all right, thank you. Any questions on the security drill update? All right, good. I'm gonna turn it over. I know I saw John, Brian's, are you hiding, Brian?
He's here.
For those of you who are not here often, John is our facilities director and Brian is the lead on our site construction managers epic. Dazzle us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me again tonight. Right now, as you can tell, if you look around the outside of the building, if you're familiar with the block sections, D block is done, which is the industrial art section. The rear section, which is the C block, which comprises the cafeteria area and also the media center. The areas that we got left to do right now for windows and doors are just basically the southern part of A, which is the sign section, which brick is going up. And as you can tell, the wall section in the restoration in front of A, facing the road, is being done. So that's what's happening. We're almost wrapping up, targeting to have The masonry completed by the end of the month, which is the end of weather permitting. The site restoration has started, which is part of the masonry, is we're grooming to get ready for grass. We're putting sidewalks down. We're gonna be doing some paving patching and so on for that to button up the outside. The inside is progressing. We're finally into finishes. In the D block, we have vinyl tile, we have painting, we have doors, we have lights, we have ceilings, and we're going through a block pattern of finishing up and wrapping up through the entire building. So that's progressing to have it completed for the summer. The last section that we have is the site and paving improvements, which is walkways, parking lot, bus lanes. That was awarded. We had a kickoff meeting, and they're targeting to start next month. This month, I mean, in May, working on walkways and over by the high school, and the work over by the junior high will start right after school gets out.
I have a question, Brian, that, the kickoff meeting, the first meeting with the architects and everybody for the actual site work, that is tomorrow, am I correct?
We had a kickoff meeting and we had the first project meeting.
Project meeting's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
Kickoff meeting was last week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks ago.
Okay, so the meeting tomorrow is basically back to renovation.
Well, no, basically what the kickoff meeting was pretty much documentation.
Okay,
It's checks and balances for all the documents, the insurances, everything else, and then they're able to go get their permits. And we have, besides that, we had the soil conservation approval, and we have county approval to do some work on the roadway. So all that lined up within the past 2 weeks, and now they're looking to start setting up some soil fencing and such through the area for the walkways.
okay, so the site meetings will be held every other Wednesday at,
9 a.m.
thank you.
So when you were talking about the different blocks and the progress on that, you noted you're progressing and you're wrapping up. Just for clarification or confirmation, all is on schedule?
We're targeting right now to be ready for school start.
In advance of school to start, that it's turned over?
As soon as he
so
turns
we-
things over to us,
Yeah.
we're gonna go in there and start prepping the classrooms. Which D-Wing hopefully will be ready within a couple of weeks, so we can start going in there and prepping the classrooms. We're trying to knock out D-Wing, so we won't have to deal with that during the summer.
Right,
Just keep moving on.
right. So that we are ready for
Yeah.
school, not
Absolutely.
just that you're done.
Anybody else have questions? Brian, you have anything else?
No?
Okay, I want to thank Brian and John too for the great pictures.
Okay.
They do help, they really do.
Looks great.
The last pictures that were sent out were of the D-wing corridors, which look awesome, clean, and the only thing missing is the inlay of the tile, right?
Correct.
That, because that has not come in yet,
Correct.
which will be green,
Yes.
Yes.
yes. Kelly or?
No comment.
I know, it's a standard joke with me, but that's okay. All right, John, you have anything you'd like to add?
No, they basically said it right. As soon as he turns things over to us, we'll move in there and start getting classrooms ready.
Okay.
We're prepping and working on getting Mr. Pinelands for next week in the high school gym. So we're working on that.
Awesome.
Okay?
And the outside then, I know the last meeting I attended, they were making sure that the outside was all clean, the fencing down. whatever.
Right.
Yeah, okay, great.
I haven't heard from the township yet, but I've heard from the state fire marshals, tentatively to come down Friday to go over everything that we need
Right,
for
okay.
the gym.
You had mentioned the meeting with Ollie.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm still waiting to hear back from him, but the 2 fire marshals are on board and they'll come down when we're ready to have them come down.
That's awesome, all right,
Okay.
great. Thank you,
I sent them
gentlemen.
plans today, actually sent them a schematic of what we want to do for it.
Okay,
So hopefully I'll get some feedback from him tomorrow.
okay. Thank you very much. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it. Before you take the seat there, all right, I brought this up in the president's update. Okay, Tony and I have been attending renovation and masonry meetings, which means that every Thursday, either at 9 o'clock or 2 o'clock, I sometimes get my times mixed up, Tommy and I are in a meeting, there is now an extra meeting being added, and that is for the site. I really do not want to attend another meeting. A little burnout on terms that I never really quite get. So if anybody is available they will always be at 9,
9 o'clock, yes.
9 in the morning.
Wednesday.
Every other week, on a Wednesday. There's one tomorrow. I truly would appreciate it. So I'm sure you will be all rushing to email me.
I'll trade you 2 budget meetings.
No. This is not, let's make a deal.
I would be up for maybe tag teaming with somebody. I have to take
Well, because you would have to go
vacation
into work
time, so,
late.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll see if
Somebody
somebody's
that would be
willing.
once a month, I think. But
Okay,
see if
all right.
anybody else
If
is
these guys
available,
can.
that would actually be much better.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if once a month isn't bad.
Yeah, once a month, I think you're probably.
Right, okay. So I have a great suggestion. Why don't the two of you get together and see how your schedules would work? That's awesome.
Or if
Mr.
anyone
President,
else is available, that's maybe.
I will
or another
continue
time.
because, as we stated to this public when all this started, that we would keep oversight of what's going on here with this construction to ensure that we get what we are all paying for. Thank you.
So
You
you're
guys have done
volunteering
more
on
than
Wednesday?
You're
just-
volunteering to go
Yeah,
Wednesday?
The Wednesday too, yep.
You might have to go once every other month. No, I'm not going.
You're continuing with Thursday.
I'm doing my Thursdays.
All right, now, the reason everybody's here to go through the 2019-2020 general fund budget presentation for Pinelands Regional High School. Up here we have our Board of Education members. I want to give a very heartfelt thank you to Ms. Potlakua, Ms. McVeigh, Mr. Kubricki, and Mr. Williams for incredible amount of time and effort that they put into this. I commend them for how much they sincerely care about the outcome of this and how much of their personal time they dedicate to making sure we're covering all the details here. And this is a particularly challenging budget cycle, but we'll go through this and then open it up for questions. So a quick overview, we discussed this at the last meeting, the district's current financial health. So the district's reserve balances, which is basically the equivalent of our savings account, those balances are down 71% since 2013, are reflected in that graph on the left. Unassigned fund balance, another measure of our financial flexibility, is down 21% since the same period in 2013. We found out through the School Funding Reform Act that state aid is being reduced by an estimated $400,000 by the year 2024. And there was an informal survey of business administrators done by, I think it was West Orange BA. And they surveyed 50 schools and they asked them, what's the size of your budget and what are the size of your individual reserve balances? Pinelands ranked in the bottom 5th between 40th and 50th of the 50 schools surveyed. And so the point of sharing this with you is to say that we have limited financial flexibility right now. And one of the reasons you see this is this is where all of our revenues come from. We get 62% of our revenue from the local taxpayer, and that 34% is state aid. So when we hear we're losing $400,000, that's coming out of a big chunk of one of our primary revenue sources. Now we're looking at the other revenue sources, our tax levy projection, and if you look, the blue line that's on the top, that's straight and clean slope, is a 2% tax levy that if we had gone 2% from 2010 till today. The green line is our actual tax levy during the same time. So we talked about in 2013 as the financial flexibility started to deteriorate, that's also the same time we weren't going to 2% cap. So the point of this is to show you that when we don't go to the 2% cap, we deteriorate our savings balances and limit the financial flexibility of the district. And so when we build the budget, the state gives us apportionment details. And they're telling us, these are the sending districts in your town. These are the valuations of all the assessed value of property in each of those towns. The state does some magic state stuff and does some equalized values on those valuations and does the same thing for enrollment. And what they do is basically get to this number and say, all right, Little Lake Harbor, you represent whatever the budget is for Pinelands, you pick up 75%, Tuckerton, you pick up 13%, Eagleswood 7%, Bass River the remainder. So we talk about the School Funding Reform Act and how it impacts Pinelands. is the local fair share goes up, that's your tax dollars. The state aid goes down. And so this is not the same for everybody. There are districts that are, this is the reverse, they're seeing increases in state aid. And so it's a little troubling when we're losing money and making cuts and other districts are picking it up. But here's a snapshot of all the categories of state aid that we get and how they compared last year to this year. The total loss in state aid this year was $34,000. This represents an 8% of the total amount that we should have cut, according to the formula, which fluctuates a little bit based on local fair share and enrollment. So this is, if we use the guidance we were given from the New Jersey School Business Administrators Association, these are the projected cuts till 2024. And so the one thing that's been particularly challenging for us is the School Funding Reform Act doesn't specifically address special education. So they assume that every district in the state is 15% special ed, and they fund you that way. So if you're actually higher in that percentage, like Pinelands is, and like many of the sending districts in Southern Ocean County, you do not get the extra state aid that usually comes with a special ed student. And so it can be challenging to meet your budget goals when you're not getting funded at your actual special ed enrollment. So I would ask the people of the town, if you're out and speaking with legislators or you want to have an impact, there's legislators out, there's legislation being introduced, and we could certainly call the leaders of the 9th Legislative District and ask for their support in funding special education at actual enrollment. That would be a really significant impact to the district. Now, obviously, like we mentioned in the previous slide, this shifts the financial burden from the local to the local taxpayer through the calculation of local fair share, which is part of the school funding reform, the school funding formula. And districts like us who are losing aid are going to face pretty significant cuts over the next several budget cycles, this being the least significant of the cuts that we're going to look at. And so we have enrollment. If we're looking at this, this is one of the things impacting our state aid. Our enrollment's down, and it's recovered very slightly from 17-18 to 18-19, but again, it's fairly flat. We could see a change in our fortune with the School Funding Reform Act if we were to see our enrollment recover. We're seeing a little bit of that in Little Lake Harbor right now. Here's a history of the school tax history. And, you know, and this is, again, goes to, it's kind of a piggyback off the point earlier where we showed the actual tax levy. This jumps around a little bit. You got a little bit of fluctuation annually. But the school tax rate, because our revenues are limited to the state and the taxpayer, and they can only grow by that tiny bit every year, the school budget tends to stay fairly constrained on a year-to-year basis. So when we're losing money, we look for ways to save it. I would say the most two very significant ways we're doing that are up here. The biggest one, and I commend the Education Association and our negotiations committee for this, because they moved the base health plan into something called the SHIF, or the School Health Insurance Fund. It kept rates from last year to this year fairly steady. And that's significant because in previous years, this number would swing by $800,000 or more on a year-to-year basis. And you can imagine that if I have to put almost $1 million into that health benefits line, that's $1 million that doesn't get to fund other areas of our operation. So in this new shift, we're limited to an annual change of plus or minus 4%. And so we limit our annual change in health benefit costs to a little under $250,000. Still a very significant amount of money, but something much more manageable for us. And we've also talked at length about the shared services agreement. Not included up there are the departmental shares. We share cafeteria staff. We do shared cafeteria services with all the sendings. We provide IT to Eagleswood, to Bass River, to Little Lake Harbor. And so we're going to continue to look at these because they've become a way for us to be able to produce savings and limit the amount of cuts we have to make in the budget. And next year, there's some key appropriations that were important that we discussed as part of the budgeting process. The Pinelands Experience is back, the JAGS program, and our dual enrollment courses. There's the 2 academies that were added. Here's the budget detail for this upcoming year. The budget is a 3.7% tax levy, which includes the use of about $342,000 in banked cap. And we don't need to read them all up there, but that's the detail that we submit. This may differ slightly if you have a printed paper agenda. This was updated, so there's some values in the total column are going to be slightly different, but this is the actual numbers, and this will be updated on the agenda online as well.
So now we're gonna go through the individual tax levy impact on the town. So if we look at the valuation, we're looking at the information provided to us in the state in that apportionment detail. The valuation in Little Egg Harbor is up a little bit. So that tax levy of 3.7% means the average home in Little Egg Harbor, which is roughly $200,000 in value, will see an increase in taxes of about $30 a year. We also have the 100 and 300,000 comparisons up there. And we'll go through this for each town. Next is Tuckerton. And this one's really significant because Tuckerton, if you notice on the valuation, the bottom row there, they saw a really significant increase in assessed values. And because of that increase in assessed values, their taxes will go down next year, even though they're getting the same 3.7% hike. So the real takeaway when you look at this stuff is the assessed values, having steady assessed values in your town is a key to keeping your tax rate stable. And a lot of our towns are mixed with mostly residential. And so, you know, certainly some corporate tenants and neighbors can help stabilize that a little bit. Here's looking at Eagleswood where the valuations went down fairly significantly, where that same 3.7% means the average home will see an $85 increase per year. And Bass River, where again valuations were down in that town, the same tax rate delivers a $96 increase on a $200,000 home in Bass River. And so our next steps in the budget process, the budget was submitted to the county on March 20th and approved. We are right smack dab in the middle of the first public budget hearing happening right now, and we will hold our final public budget hearing on May 13th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. No problem.
Were there any questions from the board? I forgot to ask while I was up there.
Yeah, I do have one. As you noted, the evaluations, when we talk about sharing of the budget across the different districts, valuations is a key driver. Could I just ask you to please double check? I'm surprised that the valuations for Eagleswood went down so much. So could I ask you to please just double check that?
We used
The
in
numbers-
that, they haven't been certified yet, so we used the apportionment detail that was provided from the state when we put the estimates up there. But I'll double check it versus the
Yes, please.
certified
Thank you.
net presence.
Any other questions from the board on the budget?
I don't have any questions, but I'm going to, during the vote on the budget, express my comments as it relates to the budget at that time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Anybody else? Okay, awesome. Moving on to our student representatives. Are they here from the junior high or the high school? No. Okay. Ms. Molesky, where are you?
I'm here. I'll make this short and sweet since we have a long agenda ahead of us. Basically, we have our last meeting coming up May 14th. That is our 7th meeting of this year, so we're excited. We did a lot this year. We did have our career job fair. We had such successful community involvement, so I was really happy to see that. Our next community event is this Saturday. We're having our yard sale, craft show. It starts at 7 to 1 here at the junior high parking lot, so if anybody wants to come. I also emailed the board. I don't know if anybody got the flyer. Yes, you got it?
Yes.
You get it?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I got one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. I just said the Pinelands.
That it was this Saturday.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so and I have flyers to give to everybody, but instead of always killing trees, because, you know, I'm environmentally
Does anybody
crazy.
want one?
Does
Did you
anybody
find your
want one?
DJ?
Do you want, any?
No, I'm gonna be the DJ of the day.
Multi-talented, Michelle.
Yes, okay, anybody else want one? At any rate, so yeah, I'll DJ if need be.
I'll take it.
You would, okay. Sorry, I'm like moving around the cabin here. There we go, you're welcome. And I think that's really about it. Anything else?
No, but I think on behalf of the board, we'd like to thank you for your continued enthusiasm, your endless energy, and all that you've done to, you know, again, bring to life the PTSO.
Thank you, and really, the administration, very supportive, and I have a great team of representatives with me that, you know, really helped me out a lot. So it's not just me, I'm just the face of the enthusiasm. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
All right, students of the month. Is Mr. Short here?
Good evening, everyone. It is once again my pleasure, on behalf of Dr. Clark and Mr. Denning and the junior high school staff, to present our students of the month for the month of March. Assisting me tonight is one of our 7th grade student council members. This is Ben. So,
Hi, Ben.
So, first up, we'll start with 7th grade. Our 7th grade student of the month is Cecilia Abreu, and this is what Mr. Strauss has to say about Cecilia. Cecilia is constantly trying to boost her confidence by seeking help. While it's difficult for her to gather the courage to ask questions of the teacher, she is standing up for herself and gaining that confidence. She is not a distraction, but an attraction to look up to for what a model student should look and be like. Congratulations, Mr. Strauss. I had spoken with Cecilia earlier, and unfortunately she wasn't able to make it, but I'll make sure she gets here, so congratulations to Cecilia, our 7th grade student. Moving on to 8th grade, it's a pleasure to have Olivia here. Hi, Miss Benson. So, Olivia Benson is our 8th grade student of the month, and this was written by her phys ed teacher, Mr. Dan Mulligan, and here's what he has to say. Olivia has been a pleasure to have in class all year. She always has a smile on her face and meets or exceeds expectations. In addition, she is involved in after-school activities and exemplifies what a Wildcat here at Pinelands is. Congratulations, Mr. Mulligan, and it is my pleasure to introduce Olivia Benson, our 8th grade student of the month. And finally, our 9th grade student of the month. Unfortunately, he was unable to be here as well, but our 9th grade student of the month is Anthony Michael Basile, and here's what his teacher, Ms. Pomeroy, has to say about Anthony. I can think of no better choice for March student of the month than Michael Basile. Michael currently maintains a straight A average in all academic subjects. He always contributes positively to class discussions and is well liked by his peers. Michael is also a Wildcat athlete and has great artistic ability. He is a true leader and a role model to other students, and I am sure he will be a success throughout the rest of his school career and beyond. It is an honor to be his teacher, and I will miss him next year, and that was written by Ms. Pomeroy, so congratulations to Mr. Basile, and make sure he gets that as well. Just 2 other things before I hand the podium over. Once again, I would really like to commend and thank our staff for taking the time out of their busy days to write these for our students, and also to our food services department, because in the back of your plaques, you also have a free pass for anything in our cafeteria, so feel free to use that whenever you please. And congratulations not only to our junior high school students, but our high school students. And with that being said, I will turn the podium over to Mr. Molesky. Mr. Molesky?
Thank you, Ben.
Yes, and thank you, Ben. Put a great job on that.
Thank you, Mr. Shore. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to present to you the High School Students of the Month. I'd like to start with our sophomore student of the month, Elise Wazalkowski. Elise, why don't you come on up here and we'll embarrass you in a little bit. And I'd like to take a moment to read what Elise's teachers have to say. Elise's teacher says she asks great questions, does a great job of making everyone's day a little better. She is honest and outspoken in an authentic way and is a pleasure to have as a student. Ms. Herbert, her physical education teacher, writes that Elise is a wonderful student to have in class. She is always helpful, kind, and full of positive energy. Elise works hard in everything she does and is always willing to lend a hand to the teacher or even another student in class. She is a great example for all other students and a great friend to all. Congratulations, Elise. Good job. Our junior student of the month is Yasmin Johns. Is Yasmin here? I don't think I see her here. So I'll share with you what her teachers have to say, and then I'll be sure that she gets her award. Yasmin's teachers say that she is a thoughtful and genuine young lady, inquisitive and conscientious, and she shows tremendous dedication on the cross-country fields. Ms. Flanagan said, Yasmin has been in my classroom for 2 years now, and she just continues to exceed my expectations. She is hardworking and cares about her grades. She puts in 110% effort every day and every period. Yasmin works well with others, and she asks for help when needed. She continues to be successful in BOE school, and she maintained all of her grades while participating in cross-country in the fall. She is always positive and has great behavior and attendance. Yasmin has set herself up for a successful junior year, and I know she'll continue to do well. So congratulations to Yasmin. And then finally, we have our Senior Student of the Month, Chad Mawini. Chad, please come up. Congratulations. And let's hear what Chad's teachers have to say about him. Chad's teachers say that he is a bright individual who will often help a fellow classmate when needed. He is mature and responsible, in addition to being funny, friendly, and compassionate. Ms. Urban writes, congrats to Chad. I am thrilled for this overeager, enthusiastic young man receiving Student of the Month. I have had the pleasure of having him in senior health and physical education this year. He welcomes everyone with a smile and loves to be active. He is well liked by his peers in class. He is always cooperative and keeps the class lighthearted with his comedic ways. In addition, we are Can Jam reigning champs for 2 years in a row. Chad has potential to be very successful in his future endeavors. Stay healthy, stay happy, and work hard. Chad, great job. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Molesky. We're going to take about a 2-3 minute break so that parents or our students of the month who need to leave can do so without disrupting the rest of the meeting. So you've got about 2 or 3 minutes. Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to the board work session. One of the things for board forum, with the exception of my plea for volunteers, and thank you, Karen, thank you, Tommy, and thank you, Kim, and no Betty Ann, I'm not taking you up on your deal. So, one of the things that Dr. McCooley has asked us is to briefly discuss where we want to go with this school start time. Whether we want to kind of wait to see, you know, is the study passed, does it occur, and what's our other option here? Form a committee?
So, I mean, we could definitely form a committee. We can look at this again as a board during maybe one of our meetings.
During the summer,
Right,
when we have a little more.
workshop. And the other thing we have to consider is it's going to affect all the neighboring school districts, so maybe having representatives from those districts also.
Okay, what do you
Maybe
guys?
Presidents.
Right,
I think as a body, we should decide whether or not it's something we think that's important enough to pursue, and then take it from there.
Do I understand it correctly that the pilot program is gonna start in September?
So if the bill was passed,
If the bill
the
passes.
pilot program was going to start. So
Okay.
I can get an update and email that out to see where we're at with that.
So did you get an overview of, or a sense of how much time we're talking about? Are we talking about like half hour? Does it have to be an hour? Like what time do they start now exactly?
Who can?
Our students at Pinelands.
7:20.
Okay.
7:05 is the first, like, it's the first home class is 7.
That's the first bell.
by 7.
You're here by 7. So what would they be, like, what is the normal, like, what are we talking about, 40 minutes? Are we talking about an hour? Like, I just think my nieces and nephews, they're gonna stay up later. So I mean, that's kind of my thing, but I don't know, like, what do, they say that if they go to bed at a certain time and
Not if they're
half
biological,
an hour
so.
later? No, I'm just trying to finish the question. So if they go to bed by a certain time, say, what, 10 o'clock or something, or 11 o'clock, I think you said. And then what, we stay a half an hour, if we move it a half hour, it makes a difference? Does it have to be longer than that?
The American Medical and Pediatric Association recommends starting times 8:30 and later.
Oh, jeez.
But the earliest, like Dr. McCooley said, is at Point Pleasant, which is about 7:50, 8 o'clock. That's the school district in Ocean County which starts the latest. There's not, they start the latest, but they do have that earlier period also for different activities.
How do we think staff feel about that? Because it changes their working day?
I think that would all be part of the study that we'd have to do, and really, we can't forget the fact that it would impact neighboring districts because of our tiered busing. And the
And
other
sports.
big factor is we're at the southernmost of Ocean County, so those schools in Point Borough, Point Pleasant, it doesn't affect them as much with sports because there's less travel time. So if they start later, here we'd have to have our students, the last period, they would have to miss a lot because they'd have to leave a class period to go to an activity.
It's a complicated issue.
It is.
But the corresponding benefits from all aspects, whether it be academic achievement, whether it be mental health, whether it be attendance, whether there are so many positive benefits for the students, but there are yet so many complications for the parents and the teachers who have different biological clocks in terms of, I can't sleep past 6 o'clock in the morning because that's my clock. I get up at 6 o'clock and I can lay in bed and sleep, that's my clock. And so parents and adults have different, sleep-wake times than adolescents. And the benefits are really, really, really impressive in terms of, but yet the complications are problematic. So you have a choice either to wait for the pilot study, wait for the state to mandate the thing, or to look at it individually as a board, as a community, and the parents and teachers, so that's, depends on what the board wants to go. Do they want to pursue the issue now, or do they want to wait? And that's,
All right, I need to get a feel for the way the board feels. Would you like to, just say, hey, we kind of are where we are? Would you like to look at this, let's say, right towards the end of the school year and gather a group? Because I think Dr. McCooley's right, our sending districts would be affected. I'm wondering if additional information could be gained from Mr. Sunderman and how that's going to affect our sporting events,
We're not
etc.
even thinking about doing it for September, right?
No.
I
Oh
think we're
gosh,
just-
no.
It's just
So
a
there's
discussion,
time
right?
to plan this out a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't want to kick it down the road, but.
Do you want to wait to see if the pilot's going to take place? I can get some more information on
I
that.
thought it was passed. The bill hasn't passed? I thought it did.
Honestly, Pat, I have not checked it in a few weeks.
Okay, because I was under the understanding the pilot program, it was actually going to be 3 to 4 years. And schools could submit an application to be part of that pilot program, I guess throughout the state. That was my impression of what I read.
We could do that.
I think we're too late to participate.
Yeah,
In the
I did
pilot
try to
program,
see if
yes.
there was an application available online, I guess through the DOE, but I could not find anywhere an application that a school would submit, or if any schools
I
had
haven't
submitted.
seen
So
anything.
maybe you're right, it hasn't been passed.
Yeah, I
but,
haven't seen anything.
I don't know. Personally, one board member, I mean, we could form a committee, but if the state's gonna do this anyway, the pilot program, do we just wanna wait and see what the outcome of that is? I mean, they did say it was gonna be a 3 or 4 year pilot program, which is a long time, but again, it's a long amount of time for them to gather the data that I believe that's gonna be necessary to put forth what they're gonna do. And who knows, the state might mandate this. We don't know. I personally would like to see what the state's gonna do right now. I would like to know how a school becomes involved in the pilot program too.
Is
I
that what
think you had to
California did?
volunteer, you had an opportunity to volunteer, I think it was about a year ago this time.
Okay.
Right,
So,
right.
I don't know if
They already have, okay.
I would be interested, I think in your information that you shared, Central Regional is starting quite later than us, 7:40 if I.
They were, but now if the second slide, they had to go back to an earlier time.
because of the vocational school. They tried the 7:45 start, but had to go back to because of the vocational school schedule.
Because I do think sometimes in the morning, I don't see how an hour later start it would really be feasible, with the either after-school activities or the impact on our sending districts. But I do think to some degree, 15, 20 minutes in the morning would make a big difference.
All right, how about we, go ahead, I'm sorry, Mr. Williams.
Well, I think with all the studies and everything, that it does show that it has validity to it, and it's better for all of the kids coming through the systems. I'd like to see us look at the avenues to be able to explore it, not saying we could start tomorrow, but I think as a district, we should really look into this to ensure that we're doing the best that we can for our students. You know, when we're talking about the lates to school and everything else, I think that's part of that issue. So I think it's something that really should be looked at in the best interest of the students.
All right, let's do this. Dr. McCooley, if you could get us the information, the additional information on the pilot program. In the meantime, on Friday, in my update, I'm gonna put out, and maybe what we can do is start a little committee within our school, not just a couple board members, but also, you know, we need a couple parents, we need Mr. Sunderman, we need the people that it is gonna affect. Once we kind of have our ducks in a row, expand the committee to our sending districts and see what additional impact it would have there. And let's see if we can't get it kicked off early this summer to begin the discussion. Is that good for everybody?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. All right, moving on, we are still in, board forum. Is there any new business? Do we have any new correspondence, anything like that? Okay, any remarks from any of our board members for board forum? That you wanna bring up? Okay. All right, I'm sorry, what? Karen? No, okay. All right, in a moment, we're gonna move on to our residents forum. However, I have something that I am going to read that I would like you all to listen to carefully. Included in our agenda are 2 residents forums. These forums are your time to voice your opinions and your concerns to the Board of Education. Because of frequent residents forums, I've had to do some research. I used Robert's Rules of Order, I used New Jersey School Boards Association, and of course I used our policy. According to our legal counsel at New Jersey School Boards, your comments and concerns generally go through the chair. That's me. It is not, I repeat, it is not a forum to debate issues or enter into a question and answer period or a cross-examination of this board or any board members. In addition, it is my responsibility to maintain a certain level of public decorum. In my 3 years as president, we have been through some difficult times together, which have resulted in meetings where respect and decorum have been questionable. Looking at the past, but more importantly, looking at the most recent Decorum of Residents Forum, I am making changes moving forward. I have informed the board of my intended changes. These changes are covered under policies 0162, 0164, and 0167, and are totally within my rights as the president of this board. In addition, they are part of Robert's Rules of Orders. They are also part of the law. Residents Forum will be limited to 20 minutes for each session, 30 minutes if there is a very large crowd. A person may speak for 3 minutes. The speaker must address me. The speaker may voice his or her opinions respectfully. Questions may be asked, but under no circumstances will there be any attempt to answer those questions until the speaker has been seated. It is not debate time. There will be no debate. If the question cannot be answered immediately, you will be asked to leave your email address. The appropriate respondent will reply as soon as he or she is able. If you do not wish to leave your email address, there is a question and answer form on the school district's website that has been there for quite some time now. I would suggest you utilize it. The superintendent does read these questions at our meetings and gives the answer. So please, send in your questions. There is an additional venue that is open to you, which is Sit with a Soup. It is held twice a month, I believe, once a month. In addition, our superintendent has willingly given out her cell phone number, personal cell phone number, to board members, residents, teachers, etc. Call her. No one will be permitted to speak a second time unless no one else wishes to speak, and if time remains. Under the rules of proper decorum, I will gavel any person who does not demonstrate respect and proper public decorum, and I will ask you to be seated. Lastly, please be clear that there are certain items that no matter what you want to know, will never be discussed. The most common are privacy issues, employee, students, and discipline, litigation or anticipated litigation, attorney-client privilege, negotiations with bargaining and non-bargaining units, security issues, and lastly, evaluative aspects of a staff member's employment. Thank you. If anybody would like to speak, please come up, state your name and your address.
I've tried to get this to 3 minutes. I'll do the very best I can.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Can you time this for me, please, Yolanda?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. My name is Cindy Junowitz, and I've been a social studies teacher here for many, many, many years. When you say Pinelands family, I truly feel that. I reside during the day in A118, right down the hall. After all these years in our district, this is the very first time I've ever felt compelled to speak. Normally, I'm in the background. The reduction in staff in our district will hurt the education of our students. We need to put students first, and I am kindly and respectfully requesting the board consider other options. All of our personnel are important to the education of Pinelands, but none are as critical as Media Center Specialist Leslie Carban. In the era of test score emphasis, considering the reading struggles our student population faces every day, Leslie's Media Center Specialist expertise is an essential element of their success. To quote April 2019 NJ Review magazine, losing a Media Center Specialist is a tragic loss to a school district because a certified school library media specialist transforms learning for students. Every student in New Jersey should have a school library media specialist. I'm trying to read fast. I have co-taught with Ms. Carban several times and have witnessed the captivating effect she has on students. She has enhanced lessons for my students on Revolutionary War this year by presenting challenging primary source documents, personal family records, and endless instructional passion and careful planning. She is a master Media Center Specialist who facilitates effective learning by enthusiastically getting students excited about the lesson. She creates lessons adeptly meeting the spectrum of educational levels using a wise mixture of technology and knowledge, and she does it across the curriculum. In particular, I've seen her work with our SPED population, which has suffered recently. I have witnessed the positive interaction, both socially and on their career education experience on a daily basis. The research is clear. Certified school library media specialists support effective education, provide innovative information, literary education for all, and partner with teachers to craft authentic research assignments. Again, a quote from April 2019. Ms. Carban effectively completes a multitude...
Cindy, I'm going to ask you to just kind of wrap it up, okay? Please. I mean, you've hit your 3-minute limit. Could you, please? Thank you.
Sure.
Amazing.
That's just not right.
No, it's not right.
It's not right.
Ms. Carvan effectively completes a multitude of specialized tasks every day in the running of our media center. I started to talk to the copy center today and she calmed me down, or the copy machine. In fact, I have witnessed several tasks simultaneously. She helps students, parents, teachers, administrators, and community members numerous times in the course of a regular day. Data shows that her average weekly contact with students is 207 in February, this past February, 315 in March, and April was 400.
Thank you, Ms. Junowitz. I appreciate it.
I'm disappointed.
You know what? Take my 3 minutes.
You can't do that, sorry.
Disappointing.
I'm Christy Raver. I teach at Frog Pond now. Ms. Carvan has many daily obligations demanding her expert certification involving print, reference, research, Chromebooks, MacBooks, computers, audio-visual equipment, scheduling, copy machines, and phone inquiries. She leads the recycling program, the library page, programs with Mrs. Rosario's, Mr. Radis's, and Mrs. Kern's classes, which provides much-needed career education for our SPED students. Additionally, she works with Mr. Oakes, formerly Skolsky's class, on weekly lessons. To name a few more of her contributions, Ms. Carvan also works closely with the Family and Consumer Science program and weekly with Ms. Trinelli's classes, and last year with the entire 7th grade, as evidenced by the Media Center knowledge of our 8th grade. Her unique certification allows her to focus on literacy and technology in all grades across all curriculums. She also initiated an outreach program with the Ocean County Library to provide free library cards to students and staff, as well as facilitating print and online materials not available to students in our library. The list goes on, but I'll stop there, as I'm sure you can get the picture. Is there more?
Yeah.
Thank you.
While doing all this, she makes our media center a welcoming space, especially important to those students needing a safe haven during the day. She is a certified specialist whose skills cannot be effectively replaced by members of our uncertified clerical staff, nor can she be replaced by individual duty assignments, which will result in uncoordinated and ineffective instructional practices. She is essential in our Pinelands educational family because she teaches 21st century skills our students do not get elsewhere. And I'm with Cindy on this.
Yeah. Thank you, Christy.
Kelly Marr. Is this only for the agenda items on any of these things on this paper, right?
Agenda items only.
Okay. One question I have is on the job descriptions that Dr. McCooley was stating, we did not put up assistant superintendent that you're asking for as well. That was skipped over. And I don't understand why Sean Bannon went from being a RIF to all of a sudden now being as a resignation. And I would say we roughly have, 200 students in our school, and you're taking away speech. My daughter needs speech, and you only have to, if you have 200 students, how is that going to affect my child?
Thank you, Kelly. Unless you want to address, when she's seated.
The assistant superintendent position was already approved as Gina Fresca. It was Cheryl's position. All we did was change the title. So the job description has to be reapproved. The second one I can't talk about, it's personnel. And the last one with speech, one of the positions is getting cut down as a reduction in force to part-time. So the 7th and 8th grade will have a speech teacher. I'm not sure where the number 200 came up with, but there's way more than 200 special education students. But in the 7th and 8th grade for next year, we're anticipating about 59 students that may need speech services. So a part-time speech teacher can service them effectively. There'll be a full-time speech teacher in high school.
For 200 people.
Mr. Roth?
Charlie Roth, thank you for remembering me. Nice to see you all. I'm not going to ask a question. If I do, it's rhetorical. And specifically for the agenda items, and also, by the way, it's nice that this is further back. You're not gonna have a sore neck tonight. We talked about, you talked about the retired security officer, whether it was a police officer or I'm not sure what you would have used as your resume criteria. But there's a reason they're retired, is their situational awareness and physical alacrity are not where most security and police forces want a person. So you're looking at what you've said is you'd make a cost savings by bringing in a retired licensed gun handler. And they've retired from an active force because they've hit an age that they're not as good as they used to be. So I'd rather not you hire somebody who's out to pasture because they're cheap and put them with a gun with my kids. That's an observation. I think you need to really think that one through. That sounds like a bad bowl of jello, but I also would say there's a lot of data, and you could Google it. You don't need to wait for a state study to determine that. A later starting time is much more beneficial to our students. I don't know if it matters to the staff or if your financial entanglements with the bus company or the private profit-driven cafeteria people are going to change, flavor how you decide whether you do this. But for the benefit of the kids, as Mr. Kubricki has noted, and it's well documented, there's no mystery to this, a later starting date with better sleep cycles for the kids enhances education, period. So I'm not sure what else you need to glean to figure this one out, but it's there. It's not a mystery. The last thing is, as I commented last time, per your financial data that you put up there, there's not one person here, I didn't see one person, who had a financial handout. Mr. Brown was kind enough to mention last time that yes, they are available online, but we all forgot them. So
The presentation was on the screen.
right, and as I
It'll be on the
mentioned
website.
last time, we're not benefiting from the screen as you go through it. And I did say you've done a great job, in spite of Mr. Williams' defense of you last time.
Thank you.
It wasn't an attack, but you did a great job, and you can see what I said on your streaming function, which, by the way, you do a great job also. But there's no way that we're going to keep track and deliberate what you're saying without something in our hands. You're not going to see it up there. So that's the last item for the agenda. I'm sure I've
Thank
hit
you.
my 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. The budget that was presented tonight is also available on our website, correct?
It'll be posted on the district website tomorrow. Certainly, if you have questions about the budget, you can email me. We'll be happy to answer.
Okay. Anybody else would like to speak on agenda items only?
Rick Miller of the Sandpaper. I only have questions. I have to read them quickly in a 3-minute time limit, so please write them down quickly. I want to address the issue of the learning academies. That would be covered in the agenda under the budget because I'm sure it is a line item. I want to know how many students will be enrolled in the learning academies this fall. Number 2, how many applied? Number 3, what is the line budget amount? Number 4, how many of the students that were accepted are on free or reduced lunch? And number 5, and this would be something you have to consult with your lawyer, can students be paid for dual enrollment because they're part of the academy and not paid if they take the dual enrollment classes and they're not part of the academy? Because I thought Title IX, although that dealt with female athletics, I also started the philosophy in school that one thing can't be offered to one group of students and not to the rest of the student body. Thank you.
Do you want to address, or would you like to get back to Mr. Miller?
The Learning Academies are part of the budget. It was not discussed tonight specifically, but they don't start till, not this upcoming year, they start the following year. There's only one course starting this year in the Humanities Academy. About 14 students applied for that academy, and I believe all of them did qualify for it. We don't have a number in regards to how many are free and reduced lunch. We didn't run that data yet. And just once again, any of the students that do qualify for free and reduced lunch through Stockton, those courses are free.
And there was one final question.
Students
The
in the
legality
dual
of being
enrollment?
able to offer something such as paid enrollment.
So we researched, other school districts do a similar model. I can get a follow-up answer from our attorney for you.
I would look at that.
Anybody else on agenda items? We still have approximately 5 minutes left, so if nobody else wants to speak. He's returning. They're allowed.
Kelly Mart. I have a question about Tremco that you have on the budget. It says on there that you're paying them $290,000 on Tremco for a warranty, if I'm reading that correctly. Aren't we still in a litigation with them? So why are we paying them? When you click on, I don't know which one it was that I clicked on.
Bills list.
It's what? On the bills list?
On the bills.
Okay.
On the bills.
Is that what you mean, Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can't comment on the litigation part of it, but that's just money that we did owe Tremco at this point.
But aren't we still in litigation as far as suing them still? So why are they being paid if you're still in litigation?
I can't talk about any further because we are in litigation with them, but that's a payment that was owed to them.
Okay, but what about with this still
No,
going on?
this is not a
Okay.
back and forth,
All right.
sorry. Just to clarify, because yes, we don't talk about anything that may be part of attorney-client privilege, but I think what needs to be understood, and please stop me if I'm wrong, is that Tremco is the supplier of a product, while the roofing company is something totally different. Tremco is the product, and then you have the roofing company. Okay? All right, moving on to our actual agenda. And Meg, Yolanda, if I get this wrong because of tabling, etc., please let me know. Under committee reports, instructional, I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve A 1 through 6.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion.
Thank you, everybody, for the scholarships.
Yes.
Great new scholarships.
Good. Okay, go ahead.
All right, Mr. Bonnicky.
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes, I would like some clarity on the therapy animals thing. I think we gotta discuss where we're going with that in the future, but the policy is necessary. And no on school sponsored trips due to budget constraints. All others, yes.
That's not under instructional.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Number 3.
Got it. All right, Ms. Hamidell?
Yes.
Mr. Kubricki?
Yes.
Ms. McVeigh?
Yes.
Ms. Paklakua?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, going to B, personnel. I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve items 1 through, do I have to do that one first? Sorry. I need to ask for a vote on, we're gonna take a vote on item number 4, which is a resolution to bring a motion off the table. Once we do that, then we can vote on everything. So we need a roll call on that. So do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All right, Mr. Bonnicky?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Hannadel?
Yes.
Mr. Kubricki?
Yes.
Mrs. McVeigh?
Yes.
Ms. Papakua?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Mr. Ernst, that motion is back on the table.
Yes.
That item.
All right, now we are going to, I'm gonna ask for a motion for items number 1 through 17, with the understanding that on item number 16, it should read, now therefore be it resolved that the Pinelands Regional Board of Education rejects the grievance number 2019005. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
Is that you, Pat?
Yes.
Second.
Questions?
Any discussion?
Yes, I'll start with, maybe an easy one. Item 17, comprehensive equity plan needs assessment. There wasn't a link there. Could you give an overview?
This is
What
just,
that is?
this is for Ms. Kenny guidance to do the assessment.
What is the assessment going to entail? I mean, is that a student assessment? Is that a?
It's for the affirmative action team to conduct a needs assessment.
To make sure that we are following all the laws, statutes, et
Right, so
cetera.
we're just giving her permission to do the assessment, and then she'll present the plan at another time.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? We good? Okay.
I would like to have a discussion.
Andy in particular?
Yes, first off, I just, item 1, like to wish Mr. Bennett well. Thank you for his service to our district. It was just a comment, a discussion about the RIF. We heard from the public about our media specialist. This was one, of the position under consideration. I guess I would ask that, if there would be any further consideration to it being a shared position and a part-time position. That is something that could be considered, and I apologize for putting you on the spot, but again, it was something that, you know, had been raised, and after hearing it again from our staff, whose opinion I value, didn't know how the board felt.
I think the staff member who spoke made me, I have a lot of respect for her. So it would make me wonder, but Melissa seemed very positive that this was the move we should make.
And I just want to also say that, you know, Mr. Brown did a wonderful presentation tonight and showed those long-term effects of the cuts that we're going to be facing. And we're all aware that in years to come, it's just going to get tougher and tougher. And these are hard decisions to make. And nobody wants to see staff reduced. And it's not a termination, it's a reduction. And if in the future there is a need again, and we see that that position is something that we have a void, we can always bring the position back. But a great deal of time and discussion went into the decisions that were made and the building of this budget. And this is still my stance that the position at this point should be reduced.
We're not reducing it, we're eliminating it.
Well, it's a reduction in force.
Right.
So if the position were to become again, then obviously she would be asked back in it.
Anybody else on this one?
Tommy?
Reduction in forces and layoffs are tough, no matter who the person is. Well, I've stated for years that there needed to be needs assessments for the positions before they were just merely replaced. That is no fault of our current superintendent. However, there's a couple of them that I'm really struggling with. The media specialist being one. I'm struggling with all of them. It's very, very unfortunate for any of our members of Pinelands. The media specialist, hearing everything. I've looked at some things myself, and you have to look at our students and how much they are helped. The information they can obtain here, the help they can get to be able to read. I am really, really struggling, and I don't know if we have to vote on item number 11 as a whole, or if it can be split up, because if I have to vote on it as a whole, it'll absolutely be no.
I think the other point that we discussed earlier, and I'll bring up again, is that we are going from an 8-period to a 7-period schedule. Because the students don't have as many electives, they're also not going to have a study hall. So for them to come to the media center, they will have to be with their teacher. So their teacher can use the resources in the media center to do any type of projects or instruction with them.
Any other discussion?
Yes, Madam President, on job description C, I just want it to be known to the public that that is a current staff member and is not an additional person being hired to the
Correct.
district. Especially when we are looking at item number 11 for a reduction of force.
Anything else?
I have a comment. As some of the board members have already echoed, it's a very tough situation when you have rifts. As a former educator of 35 years here at Pinelands, it's something that you don't want to see happen, regardless of who it is. We're in a tough situation, along with many, many school districts in this state, some of which are very, very close to us, that are taking action this month on very similar situations. It's unfortunate, it's a tough decision, I've wrestled with it, but I have to speak that I've sat now on both sides of the table here, and until you sit on this side and actually see the working, the budget, what goes into it, the money, when it doesn't come in, there's some tough decisions that have to be made. We hired Dr. McCooley a year ago to help move this district forward, and that included making some very tough decisions. Unfortunately, this is one of them. So my vote tonight will reflect the support of Dr. McCooley.
Any other comments, questions, or discussions? All right, right now we have a motion and a second on the table for personnel items 1 through 17, with 16 reading that the grievance is rejected. Mr. Brown.
Mr. Bonnicky.
On item B1, I abstain. On items B2 through B10, yes. Item B11, no. Item B12 through B17, yes.
Okay, Mr. Williams?
Item B11, can that be, personnel be broken out or no, because they're listed as a group?
Yolanda, can you support us on that or give us an answer?
You're asking for number 11 to be broken out?
In other words, by position, I think Mr. Williams is asking. Can it be broken down into individual rifts?
And it's the motion is to support, right, the superintendent, so it's a collective. So we're gonna-
I support the superintendent.
But it's the recommendation from me, not trying to.
Then,
So-
if it can't be broken out, then no. And number 16, no.
Okay, Ms. Hamadel?
I'm gonna abstain on number 1, And I'm just gonna say that I am supporting number 11 because that was the direction the board wanted to take with the budget, that we didn't go to the 2% cap, and I didn't agree with that at the time. I think that's one of the reasons we're here. And I think that everything else is a yes. But let me double check. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kubricki?
Yes.
Ms. McVeigh?
Yes.
Ms. Paklakua?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Moving on to item C, the report of the board secretary, business administrator. I would ask for a motion to approve C1 through C14. And number 11, should I ask to have a table first, or can I make it? Okay. Can I have a motion to table number 11, which is the strike payment services, until we can look for more into it?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Bonnicky, this is the vote to table 11. Mr. Bonnicky?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Hannendale?
Yes.
Mr. Kubricki?
Yes.
Ms. McVeigh?
Yes.
Ms. Paklakua?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
And motion is, item 11 is tabled.
So we are now voting on letter C, items 1 through 10, and 12 through 14. Huh? Do we have a motion, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Questions, discussion?
Discussion on item 12, the easy one. Motion to approve the disposal of the following equipment. Our policy 7300 requires that we indicate the method of disposal as being either for sale, donation, or discard. That is not listed on that item number, so something needs to be added or amended to number 12 if we are going to act on it in accordance with our policy.
Motion for the approval to approve the disposal of the following equipment?
But
I
it
think
doesn't
we're-
say how the method of disposal. There are 3 methods in our policy, either sale, donation, or discard. The policy number is.
We are
called-
discarding, right?
They don't work, they're getting thrown away.
But that
So
doesn't
it
mean,
needs to say that, so we need to change the wording.
you know, I'm generally not in favor of discarding any equipment. I think either donation or sales in terms of provide the school district with some resources. So if it's a discard, throw it in the garbage. It clogs up the landfills, and it's not the wisest or the most fiscally sound choice to just throw things away. So if the number 12 is to disposal as of discarding the thing, then I will be opposed to that.
So I did,
What are we doing with them?
They don't work.
I did
It's
ask a question, one of them
Right.
did work, right? One of them was working, the other.
And I didn't go, I'll defer to the staff that, I got an email that we had some non-functioning equipment. 2 of the pieces were non-functioning, the other one is extremely old and was no longer in service in the district. And so, Mr. Molesky did inquire of how we were gonna dispose of it. Because it was non-op, we decided not to put it on Gov Deals or try to sell it. But certainly, if the board's not ready to make a determination or we don't amend the line, we can motion it until, or table it until we clarify that.
I know this is unusual, but is the staff member here? I mean,
Yeah.
can they be rebuilt or refurbished or,
Donated?
yes,
That's
Mr.
what I
Molesky?
Donate?
So,
Can they be donated to somebody?
the 2 of them are not working. The one of them, the table saw, what we need to recognize is that it's an obsolete piece of equipment because there's a new table saw that has a safety mechanism that we want in place. It's like a saw stop to keep kids from getting hurt. So
Can't use the
it's
other.
functioning but obsolete as far as we're concerned. So we need to, my understanding is that we need to dispose of it, but then there might be some residual value to it. We can go through gov deals or something like that. But it's not something I don't know if it's something we necessarily, we don't know if it's in our best interest to donate. Because it is-
Lawsuit coming back to bite us.
So, but the question is not that, the question is, are we operating under policy, which we are not, because it's
Correct.
not indicated as such in a disposal manner. So that, I mean, I agree with Stephen, we've had issues in the past about disposing unused, unwanted, old equipment, and then getting a big huff and some contentious discussions. So I feel we should operate under policy as described, 7,200?
7,300.
7,300, prior to voting on this.
Can I recommend that we amend the motion to say to discard, of those three options, what was the proper terminology?
Discard.
Sale, donation, or discard.
I would recommend discard as a way to amend that because it's power tools and equipment, and we don't want to make those as donations, but, Yolanda, is that an acceptable way to amend?
Yes.
Okay, so let's be clear. Right now, as it reads, it does not clearly follow policy 7300. So the suggestion is that we amend it. Please understand that in the past, when we have had disposal of property or issues with it, it is because they were disposed of and it never came before the board. So it had nothing to do with the manner in which they were disposed of, just fact, bye-bye, we didn't know they were gone. So now we need to make sure we know what is leaving the district. So the suggestion is, do we have to make this as a motion to amend now? That, to amend number 12 to say, motion to approve discarding of the following equipment.
Yes.
Disposal by discarding.
Yes.
Yes. So now, can I have a motion to change that?
Yes.
You have a motion, you have a motion.
Gotta have a motion.
Okay, so what do you want me to do?
So we have to take the one that
Take
has
it.
all the numbers, we have to take that one off, and actually just go into a motion to amend this particular line.
So I'll take 1 through 14 off.
Second.
Now, a separate motion to approve the amendment of this agenda item.
Now may I have a separate motion?
You can't
To-
just add discarding.
He doesn't have it right now. He
Yeah.
doesn't have it.
Robert's Rules of Order.
Yes.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So now we have a motion that is amended. So now we can go back and do items 1 through 14. Yes?
Yes.
And we already have a motion on the table, correct?
No, we have to ask one.
Yes, that's
And we have to ask for it.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
I think we can do roll call.
Good.
No, it's
Yeah.
discussion on other
Oh,
items.
discussion, yeah.
Yeah, I had sent you a note, Nick, about transfer number 110, and whether or not that was actually a transfer. So you're confirming that it is?
I
Still
replied
on
to your
the
note
I haven't checked
in the
my
Q&A
email.
doc, but
Driving.
this related to the payment to Tremco?
Correct.
Right? That money came off a PO from a different vendor. We didn't have a PO for Tremco set up, so we had to set one up
Okay.
and transfer the money over. So
Okay.
that's why the money appeared on the expense adjustment report that's
Yeah.
attached.
But it's still related to account 30, which is.
It's still a capital
Yeah.
projects expense, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. for
No problem.
clarifying. Anything else? That was on the motion.
Also, on the travel, we will all be abstaining from ourselves, voting on ourselves.
Yes.
Just to clean that up ahead of time.
And can I thank Barbara Bodkin-Wilkinson again for the football school work on behalf of the board?
And what
Donation.
She's tremendous.
I don't even know what it adds up to.
A lot.
A lot.
Same way it's sending her thank you
Yeah, she's
notes,
brought a lot of money
great
to our
A lot.
district, that's
Yes.
great.
In
Yeah.
support of the field. room.
Paid for it.
Sure.
Okay, and right now, we have a motion, we have a second, we've had discussion. Yolanda is going to clarify now the motion for us.
So the
I'm gonna
motion-
make things more complicated, Madam President. Item number 6,
Yes,
the reimbursement for myself for mileage to the convention in Atlantic City.
Right.
I work at Stockton, and they have a shuttle that goes over to Atlantic City, and I took that shuttle, meaning I had no mileage cost, so I need to be removed from that reimbursement list.
So it's just an estimate, correct, Nate? Like, it's
Yeah,
just
we
an
never
estimate,
take
so
it.
if you don't put in for that, you wouldn't get the reimbursement.
okay.
So it's just an approval if you did use
So
it.
it's not authorizing,
No,
No.
no, if you have to submit
You have to
receipt, so if
submit.
you don't, then you just won't get the money.
Travel and
I've
training.
never asked for it, I know.
And as Mrs.
Flammable.
McVeigh said, we all need to abstain from ourselves on that item. Okay, go, wait, do we have anything
I
else?
still do on the budget.
Okay.
Okay. I have considerable comments on the budget, so bear with me as I go through these. This past year, in Governance 2, I attended the required by the state, and Governance 2 was on finance. And finance covered the role of a Board of Education member in negotiation and budget preparation. And obviously, the budget review and assessment in that presentation is an important function for the Board of Education. It's a place where the board reconciles the expectations and the needs of students with the community needs. And so I looked at our policy 6220 to make sure what my role is, besides going and understanding what they presented at that meeting. And what struck me is second paragraph, the quote of what each and every member of this board requirement is with respect to the budget, and I will read the quote for you. A proposed budget, and that's what we have, requires the critical analysis of every member of the board during its preparation. I'm going to repeat that. A proposed budget requires the critical analysis. Those words are important, critical analysis, and I take them seriously. And I want to share with you my critical analysis of the proposed budget. First thing I did was look up what is a critical analysis of the proposed budget, because that's what I'm required to do as a board member, and I want to get it straight. And there are three essential parts of a critical analysis of a budget. The first is to develop an overall picture of the past and present budgets. So you have to get an overall picture, and Nick presented us with that overall picture at the beginning, but I'm going to add to that. This provides what's happened in the past, along with how the present fits into that past history. The second part in a critical analysis is an examination of the parts. For a budget, this means to examine the allocations of funds in the various categories in the budget. And the third part of critical analysis of budget is the future impact of what that budget implies for the future. So I want to pass out to my fellow board members, and you can choose to look at it, keep it for myself, yeah. And to everyone on that side, passing around. This is part of my critical analysis of the past and of the proposed budget. And it's on a paper format so that, again, slides are interesting, but we lose sight of them. And I like to have a paper in front of me. So looking at the past 3 years, you will see our general fund tax levy. And in the shaded area, you will see our percent increase. The percent increase of our general fund budget over the past 3 years has been 1.5%, 1.5%, and 1%. That resulted in, since we did not hit the 2% cap, we were allowed to bank that difference. The bank amount you can see what was capped in those years. So we banked $329,000 in the 2016-17 year, $330,000 in the following year, and last year when our general budget only went up 1%, we banked $609,000. So we have $1,269,618 in our bank account, which can be used to
It's not the bank account.
It's not a bank.
In the cap.
bank, not a bank, in the bank bank capped account. Again, it's not in the bank and it's not money, it's there to use in case of an emergency. It's the bank cap that we have for future emergencies or future need that we can use to go above the 2% cap. So if we wanted to go above the 2% cap, we could go above the 2% cap $1,200,000 this year in our budget if we wanted to. But we certainly didn't do that. But one thing to note, in those past 3 years, this board has been very frugal in approving budgets which have not met the 2% cap. 1.5, 1.5, 1.0. That has given us a lot of cap money that we can use for emergencies. Along with that, you have the debt service tax levy, which you can see 17, 18 was pretty stable in terms of our debt service. Last year went up to over $1 million because of the referendum, and so our tax levy went up to $1.8 million, which was a $1 million increase. And then you see our total tax levy for those 3 years. So that's where we were.
Stephen, I don't understand that. How can the debt service tax levy be that? That's not right.
It's not right for the
That
debt
is right.
service.
The
It is,
last
but
one's
that
right.
doesn't- It's the,
The last one's right, right?
I looked at the audit reports to get those figures out of there
It's
for
our
each of
total
the
debt
years.
service
That means our
payments.
total debt service for all the
It's our
debt.
payment, though.
That's our tax, tax levies, what we're taxing, what the public is responsible for. So, in 2016-17, our general fund tax levy was $18,900,000 plus an additional $761,000 to pay debt service interest, totaling $19,749,000. So those figures are correct, and I'm sure Nick can verify that. I got them from our audits that appear online. So that's the past. That's what's happened in the past. The board has been very frugal in terms of not using the 2% cap of the state, and in order to provide the taxpayers with, and last year especially, when the debt service went up over $1 million, we made it a point not to increase the general fund balance up to the 2%, even though it initially was recommended at 2%. We passed it at a 1% level. So our proposed budget, as Nick indicated, we have a general tax fund levy of $20,198,000, a percent increase of 3.76%. Again, the budgeted cap is 2%, but we can go beyond that by using our cap budget amount, which we did of $342,000, which is another 1.76% added to the tax levy for our taxpayers. The debt service has also increased from 1.8 million to 2.3 million, almost 2.4 million, another 500,000, indicating the total tax levy that Nick presented of $22,562,232, which means the budget is proposed is asking the board to approve for our taxpayers a tax levy percent increase of 5.98%. That's the present condition. That's step one in my analysis. So those are factual things. That's the numbers. So the proposed budget with the tax levy for the debt and with the tax levy for the general fund, the 5.98% is the percent increase in the tax levy to our constituent community. Note that for me, the critical analysis in parts two, the breakdown of the budget into parts. Looking at the line items and seeing where the money was being allocated. I think Melissa did a fantastic job in meeting with the department heads and the administrators in identifying the educational needs, and in those line items presenting figures which are reasonable and achieved our educational objectives. I think Nick did a good job. He came in December and putting all these numbers together and giving us a budget that he felt comfortable with. I have a problem with going above the 2% cap and using the $342,788 from the bank cap. If we use it, we know our tax levy goes up 5.98%. Whether we use it or not, the 329,000 from 2016 and 17 is gone. That leaves us about $940,000 in bank cap for future years if we need to go beyond the 2% cap. So we still have almost $1 million in our bank cap if we need to use it in future years. The question for me was whether further cuts can be derived from budget items that do not impact our educational needs and do not impact our goals and initiatives that our district has set. So I looked at each of the budget items on the list of items, and I identified 32 budget items that would not impact the educational programs or reduce the athletic or co-curricular offerings for the students. These items total $339,500, which to me would eliminate the need to use any of our bank cap and the need to raise taxes to that level at the almost 6% level. It is my view and my analysis that the proposed $342,788 from the cap bank, again, is not necessary. And I could go over those 32 budget items, but that would take us past midnight. And I don't think the board wants to do that line item by line item. But I'm confident that there is that amount of savings in non-educational items. Now, the interesting point is the future impact, because I think the budget as proposed takes into account what I would call a cushion. It provides us with a cushion of funds should there be emergencies, should there be, as Betty Ann indicated in one of our budget meetings, should we be opening up the high school, should there be new things that happen there, that we need a larger cushion. But I think that's what we're using the $342,000 for, as a cushion, and not as an efficient and effective way to balance the needs of the students with the needs of the community. Again, using the cap is not going to affect that we're still going to have $940,179. The offset of state funding in the future years, I know in the budget resolution, it seems to indicate, which I thought was a little bit disingenuous, when it says includes the bank cap at 342, the need for a bank cap is to offset decreases in state aid. The state aid decrease for this budget is $35,000. The bank cap is primarily used to account for this budget's salary increases, which were over $500 and some thousand in terms of salary increases for teachers and staff this year. Another interesting thing about the budget and the presentation, which I think is important to bring out in terms of doing a critical analysis, our emergency reserve account, which was mentioned in the slide presentation. From my understanding, and again, this is from there is a state requirement that the emergency reserve account balance cannot exceed $250,000 or 1% of the district general fund budget up to a maximum of $1 million, whichever is greater. And typically, if we have more reserve than that, that money is used as surplus into the next year's budget. So the fact that we have 236 or whatever was presented in the budget presentation is not, I don't think, a cause of financial concern. I think that's, again, consistent with what we are required to do by state statute. Also in November, I asked the audited team what the state of nature of our school district is. Are we solid and are we on strong foundations? And they answered yes. And I think we still can maintain a solid and strong foundation without using that budget cap. And so I will be voting no in terms of percent increase of 6% total for our community tax increase, because I do not believe the budget cap is appropriate, and I believe we can make necessary cuts in non-educational and athletic items to reduce that proposed budget.
Thank you, Mr. Kaprikian. You obviously did a great deal of critical analysis and thinking about this, so thank you very much. Any other discussion on any of the items?
Yeah, I would just like to make a note further on the budget. So thank you for the analysis and the numbers. I would like to separate out the pieces from the debt service and the general fund. So when we think about the debt service, we know that it's increasing. It's increasing for the second year. That is what our community thankfully supported with the referendum.
Yeah,
So we knew that was coming. We actually, when we were trying to make people aware of the impact of the referendum for voting purposes, we had some online tools to help people and the community members assess the impact on their taxes and their homes based on the town they lived in and the value of their home. Because of the timing of when we purchased the bond and the interest rate that we purchased the bond, I think most homeowners will find out that it's actually less impact than what was modeled back when we were voting for the referendum. Yes, so that's the debt service piece. Using bank cap, I'll tell you, it was difficult for me to swallow as well. We did kind of talk about this time last year as well, as Mr. Kuberki laid out. The last 3 years, we have been tight on the budget. We did feel that there was some areas in the budget which could be tightened up, which could have more fiscal focus. And as noted, our increases for the past 3 years was 1.5%, 1.5%, and 1%. We knew going into this budget cycle, based on staffing levels, based on contractual obligations with the raises, that we would likely need to use some of the bank cap. That said, we have also been tapping into and lowering our surplus funds so that there really isn't much of a cushion left should we come up with anything unexpected. So whether you call it a cushion or whether it's an extra, you threw out $300,000, you know, whether it's $50,000 or $100,000, I'd say that's our responsibility as board members to manage that as we go through this year. And as we're voting on these different initiatives, just because it's in the budget doesn't mean we have to spend the money. If it's not the right thing to spend the money on, we should be looking to build back our surplus so that we can get in a stronger financial position to better position us for the future. So I will say from my perspective, I am a very strong believer of just because we're allowed to get 2%, we don't get 2% and think nothing of it. So it's caused me great pause to be using bank cap, but I do think it's in the best position for the district to be in at this point. So just a different view.
I was gonna let this go, but I can't let this go now. So here's my point, here's my problem with all of that. So you have a 1.5% increase instead of 2, so you're saving 0.5%, 0.5%, and 0.1%, correct? Each
So over
year.
the past 3 years, we saved half and one, we saved 2%.
Okay.
And now
And
we're
at
going
the
to
end of the year,
3.76.
at the end of this year now, instead of having a 2% raise, we have a 6% raise. So how did we save money?
Well, we don't have to have a 6% rate.
We have a 6% raise because of, mainly driven by the debt service fund.
Which is the referendum.
The general fund going up 3.7%.
We could not use our bank and have a 2% raise for the general fund.
I'll keep my 2% in my bank account as long as I can.
You
till we
can,
need it for
but
the
you
school
still have a
district.
3.76 to collect back $342.
So we,
$342,000.
if we want to do
It
that.
doesn't make sense. I'm just saying, look at the numbers. I'll go over it afterwards, but.
Again, just two opposing.
Yeah, totally.
And I'd like to, as a,
It's costing too much money.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, as a member of the budget committee, I know that substantial cuts were made to this budget. The RIFs are a great example of us having to cut this budget. And I think using the bank cap space this year is gonna position us better for next year, which we know is going to be a tight year. I fully support this budget, and I can't imagine subtracting any more money out of it.
Thank you, Betty Ann. Mr. Williams.
Budgets governmental budgets, which we're a part of government, are very, very tough. I agree with Mr. Kubricki and everything that he said. But the taxpayers voted on the referendum, which is 2% of the increase in this budget this year. It was backed by our communities, recognizing the needs of the district and what we needed to do. On top of that, unfortunately, state aid cuts, they cripple us. You saw what the numbers were on the screen. RIFs, none of us want to have RIFs. We would have to add that much more to our budget. The state, the constraints, the cost. We have $800,000 in contractual obligations next year based on what our total tax levy will be. Next year, we can go up $400,000. So right out of the gate, we're going to be in a deficit. Not adding anything for healthcare, not adding anything for anything else that we may face. Other mandates that our wonderful state does not support monetarily, but mandates that we do. Additional state aid cuts next year. We're going to start out in a hole and have to dig our way out of it. This year, we're going to get through, but really hurts me to have to say this, even though there's some wants, I believe, in the budget. That's my view. I'm one of 9. But overall, where are we going to end up and where are we going in the future? That's the bigger picture here. And if we don't do this year, unfortunately, next year is going to be even worse. I think we had people come in here that we brought into this district late in the game. Very, very difficult time. You know, we tried to get everything out there with one another, work together, do what we needed to do. But I think some of those time constraints also put us where we are at, and that as a group, moving forward, we look at the things, have more discussions, and try to do maybe other things, maybe we can't. But I think Mr. Brown come in January. Half the budget should have been done. You know, Melissa had 1 year, excuse me, Dr. McCulley had 1 year to look at where we're at with everything and make these tough decisions. Like I said, I normally vote no on a budget because mainly the state, and I don't think they fund us properly. They say we have to do things, but they don't give us the money to do it. But I think we have to pass this budget. I agree with Mr. Kubricki 100%, but I think we need to look at this long-term moving forward. Thank you. Thank you for the time, Madam President.
And I would just add that the budget committee has committed to more taking a step back, starting early. Mr. Brown has offered, let's start early and really take a deeper dive and look at a longer term horizon, and let's make sure that the budget is funding our priorities, whether it's our long range facility plan, our strategic priorities, and our district goals.
I really appreciate this because it is thoughtfully put together, and I completely understand where Mr. Kubricki's coming from, but I do have a couple comments on it. The first being on the 2% cap. The general fund tax levy information you provided there, that's what the 2% number is based off of. So every time we go to 1%, if we ever need to go to 2%, it's off a smaller pot of money. That has a compounding effect in future years, which can be challenging when we're going to lose revenue from state aid.
But does it not also have a compounding effect in terms of not increasing taxes? So while it has a compounding effect of not giving us as much money to spend, it has a compounding effect of saving taxpayers money.
So I'll give you that, and it's a good segue to the next point. You mentioned the bank cap versus the reserve balances. If we have an issue where we were short on money in our reserves, money that we have in cash on hand, is money that we can appropriate and spend for needs. Bank cap is money we can't access till the following year. So there's a big difference in planning for next year and accessing those funds and being able to meet emergent needs in the current budget cycle. So I believe that while having bank cap and having reserve balances are both helpful, you can't say that having one means you don't need the other. They're there for different reasons.
So we cannot have more than $250,000.
We have zero.
Our emergency, we have $236,000.
No,
We have like $12.
In capital reserve, an emergency reserve is zero. But
It was like $35, I think.
Yeah, it's-
When I looked,
yeah.
you know, now it's like zero.
But I don't disagree. 100%, money that we don't raise for the budget stays in the taxpayer's pocket. But on the bank cap, there's a big difference between money that we can go raise taxes if the committee approves and money that we have in the bank should emergency come on. And we've expressed at the last meeting that we are extremely tight in this year's budget to be able to make bills for the remainder of the year. So I think I want to just be clear that both of those things are separate and not one a replacement for the other. And thirdly, debt service is voted on. While I appreciate it's lumped into here, the taxpayers of Little Egg Harbor, Tuckerton, Bass River, and Eagleswood supported that. It's kind of being presented like we're just pushing a 6% budget forward. So I want to point out that the 3.76 general fund budget that I presented is a 3.7% increase. The taxpayers of these towns voted on this debt service piece. The last thing is about the $339,000 in cuts that you've identified. Well, I appreciate that. We did the process of cutting the budget with the people that work here, the department heads, the superintendents, and then brought those to the board. At no point did you bring $339,000 of budget cuts to a budget committee meeting. So while I'm going to have to say that I disagree that there's $339,000 that I'm sure there's always money in here. We could say we could take $20,000 from legal and we could take $20,000 from out of district placements. But when those expenses come up and the money's not there, and we've reduced our reserve balances because we don't go to 2%, there's nothing else we can do. We put ourselves in the position of operating in a deficit. And if we operate in a deficit, the state puts in a monitor. They put in a monitor, we pay that person $100K a year. I don't think this budget supports a monitor at $100K a year. So we have to be careful to not operate in a deficit. We do that with healthy reserve balances and, if possible, healthy bank cap. So, this was a very difficult budget process, but this is absolutely the best budget we could put forward for the 1920 school year.
And I just want to add something too. I understand that the board is very cognizant of the taxpayer, but there's a reason why our enrollment is down so low. And we need to reshift the focus back to what's best for our school district and best for the students. And we have to spend the money to do that, to bring our programs back, which will attract students and keep our students here.
Thank you. Dr. McCool,
And
thank you.
I think that's
Mr. Brown.
important too. It's not just, we owe the taxpayers the best job that we could possibly do, but I think first and foremost is we owe the students.
I agree. I just think we
Efficient
should do it within
education.
a 2% cap and not have to use the bank cap.
I think, I respectfully disagree. I think if we had kept it at 2% the last 3 years, we'd be at 2% this year. And the more we cut it, the more we cut it.
It's right
Yeah,
here.
so
You gotta
what-
make it up somewhere.
Betty Ann, what you're saying is then our last 3 years where we have been very frugal, we're now giving it all away. What we have done the past 3 years, we're giving it all away by
It's not
this
that we're
year's
giving
budget.
it all away, we need it. We need it, and we were able to do without it, but it's just as Nick said, it's a compounding effect. When you don't go to 2%, the next year, your 2% is on the 1% and not on the 2%. And that every little bit of that adds up. We're having to catch up now. That's my belief. And I know I raised it over the course of the last few years, that sooner or later, this was gonna catch up to us. Not only that, but by keeping it 2%, you keep the expectation of the budget more even. When we go from 1% now to 3.76, it does hit the taxpayer bigger in 1 year. and it makes our budget go like this, and I don't think that's the best thing to do for the taxpayer either.
And that's the catch-up, so here's your 2% line, so here's your other one, you're trying to catch up all the
Well,
time, you're
if
always
you're saying
under
they
it.
need to catch up.
But it's 1.76 more this year, and we only saved 2%, but
Right.
we only got 342 back.
Yeah.
Not the
Yeah.
23.
I just think we
have-
can respectfully
Right.
disagree on what the
We do on
philosophy
terms
is on
of,
that.
yeah.
I think we have two very, again, opposing views as to what is best, and as is always, I certainly am not gonna tell anybody how to vote, you have to vote your conscience and what you think is right. So, we have a vote, we have a motion, we have a second.
One more point of clarification on item 8, the transportation jointure.
Yes.
This is with little egg and this Nick, sorry, number 8. That is, because we handle the transportation, but this is really for a little egg student and it will be paid by them.
Yes, that's correct.
This is a week that we handle and arrange all.
As the administrator of the jointure, we're required to approve new additions to the jointure.
It's a point of clarification for everyone. I think $1.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Anything else? Roll call.
You
Oh, I'm
wanted to
sorry, Yolanda, yeah, you
clarify
wanted to
this.
clarify before we voted.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve, can you hear me okay?
All right, the motion on the floor is to approve agenda items C 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 is amended, 11 is
That's on.
yeah. So 10, 12 is amended, 13, and 14. Is everybody clear?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Bonnicky.
Yes, and abstain on item 6C.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
On item 6K, abstain. On the rest, yes, but I will state that I do feel this board and the budget committee has done its due diligence in the past. I'll leave it at that.
Ms. Hannadel?
Yes, number, 1 through 3, sorry, 1 and 2 is a yes, 3 is an abstain, 4, 5 is a yes, 6 is, everything is a yes except number F. I'm abstaining on that, and then everything else is a yes. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14 are yeses.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kubricki?
6G is an abstain, 7 is a no, and yes on the rest.
Thank you. Ms. McVeigh?
Yes, and I'll abstain on 6H. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Papakua?
Item 6J is abstain. Everything else is yes.
Thank you. Ms. Chambers?
Yes, on everything, with the exception of item 6D, I will abstain on that this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ernst?
Abstaining on MOA 6E. Everything else is yes.
Motion's carried.
Okay, residents forum, again, you have 20 minutes, a 3-minute limit, and this is on not necessarily agenda items, but any item you would like to bring to the board.
Hello, Kim Farrow. A quick couple of things. The safety officer issue, I work in Stafford and we have retired police officers. Their ages are approximately 43 to 55, I've tried to figure out. You can interview them, so if they're too old or not in your criteria, you don't have to hire them.
Discrimination.
Well, you
Tommy,
know what I mean.
That we may not be
You don't,
choice.
you don't have, you know what I'm saying. But they walk like 20 miles a day because they're checking every door all day long. They're in good shape, Tommy, come on now. An update on alumni, we are sending out membership forms, we're having a membership drive. We would love for you all to please join alumni. We are having our gala on July 19th at Sea Oaks from 6 to 11. It's going to be awesome. We hope you can all attend. The membership form is on the Cat's Eye and on the website, Highlands website. I just wanted to congratulate Jim Becker on his 160th win today for varsity golf. And I think it's great that Highlands Experience is back. That's it.
Thank you, Kim. Anybody else?
But of course, Charlie Roth, Tuckerton. You both raise a great point as far as age, whether it's discrimination or not. But again, I'm looking at the concept of somebody with a gun, and if they're the most agile, it has nothing to do with age. So you would quantify it in that context. Being my age, I'm not looking to make anybody suffer age discrimination, but I also think that having your own employee with a gun is going to affect your insurance rate. And again, I'd rather see a police officer who's been trained with a gun in the school if we have to have one, rather than your employee and your trained. No offense. You also, a number of years ago, it seems like that, a number of months ago said you would be making sure that your email addresses were on the website. They're not. Madam President, if you could please put the email addresses on the, and that's something of a question, it's more of a request. I don't see any emails on the website. If you look at some of the other school districts in the mid-New Jersey region, they've got listings of biographies for board members, years of service for board members, dates of elections for their next time that they are going to be up for re-election. Those would all be wonderful things. Might eliminate some of the guesswork and some of the questions that might mistakenly be asked outside of the proper rules of Roberts. So I would ask that you put a little more diligence into a presentation of who you are and why you are, not just you're up here telling us what's going on. And quite frankly, the last comment I'd make is when I did ask a question of Mr. Brown's credentials, if you're going to get $160,000 of my tax dollars and you just had a great debate, I learned more in the last 10, 15 minutes thanks to Mr. Kubricki than I'd seen in the flashes of slides earlier. And again, not that Mr. Brown hasn't done a good job, but it was a dialogue, and it seems like pulling teeth sometimes to understand, to glean what's going on. The more you're able to present and share with the taxpayers, with the parents, the better cooperative feeling we'll have as far as where you're going, what you're doing. The trust level will rise. I think that's a big thing, so.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Roth.
And the last thing is, I truly wasn't attacking Mr. Brown as was described. I was just trying to find out.
I didn't take it that way, don't worry. We're all good.
Thank you.
All right, first of all, and this was, I guess, probably my error, I guess.
Wait a minute, yeah, one more.
She's answering.
I'm answering his question.
I'm sorry.
It will be my email address, again, because everything is supposed to come through the president. So if it is not there, I don't have any control over the website, but my email address will be placed there.
If I could, as I said, with the other boards, other boards all have board members. So if I want to communicate with the representative from my town, it would be, I can just communicate with you, but I don't know why I wouldn't want to be able to communicate with my town's representative. That's all, and you've answered it, thank you.
Okay, and anything, obviously, that is communicated to me, whether it be a letter from a community member, a student, whatever, it is my obligation to pass that on to the rest of the board. So that is always done if I receive a letter, etc. Also, the information is passed forward because I do write a weekly update to the Board of Education. So, thank you. Mr. Miller.
Rick Miller of the Sandpaper. I want to explain why I asked so many questions about the Learning Academies. I think it's a wonderful idea. I wish I had had that option when I was in high school back in the Stone Age. My only problem would be deciding which one of the academies to go into. Until I hit 11th grade and had chemistry for the first time, and I would have said, damn, I made the wrong decision. But I do have concerns because we're talking about tightening budgets, and you're starting a new program, which I think was explained it would cost the taxpayers about $10,000 a year for each academy once it got up and running. And you'd have 4 groups of students in each academy eventually, because, you know, from their 9th grade through their senior year. So you're adding about $40,000 eventually to the budget. You're talking about a $400,000 shortage. That's 10%. So that's kind of scary. But the main thing I'm concerned about, and that's why I asked, and I hope the board would agree with this, we have to find out how many students are on reduced or free lunch. And the reason is, anybody familiar with education will tell you that the primary indicator of a student's performance is family income. It's as simple as that. It's been well known for 50 years. And I'm worried that what the taxpayers might be doing is supporting some of the wealthier families in this town paying for college tuition at a time when you're ripping teachers and everything else. So I hope that you would keep on top of that, following how many students are on free and reduced lunches, because that would be an indication of the wealth of the people that get accepted into the program. And as far as Dr. McCooley, I know, says that we want to attract students that, so many of the ones that were accepted would have gone off to mates. And one thing I could never understand is, you always say if you lose students, you lose state aid, but you also lose expensive teaching them. So, I don't know. But at any rate, please review that first year of this program carefully, because once you offer it to the kids, you can't go back on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Yes, if you could,
Okay,
please.
just a couple points on that. We did have parent meetings with them. As I said, it really doesn't start till the following year. There's only one course this year. We told that cohort of parents that not only is it not guaranteed for the 4 years if the money wasn't there, but any new groups coming in, that the deal may be different. So we're trying it out this year. We're attracting them because we want the academy to be successful, but we have to reevaluate that every year. In terms of how many students are in that group free and reduced lunch, I'll get that to you. Overall, I know that we could be close to 50% at Pinelands. We don't have all of our students always actually filling out those forms, but in terms of Stockton, it's only if they're eligible. They don't necessarily even have to be on our books as free and reduced lunch. If they would qualify, they would get those courses for free.
Thank you, Dr. McCooley.
If I could, I apologize, there was one other
Wait,
question
Mr. Roth, no.
If there's no
If
one else.
somebody else needs to speak, they should speak
Was
first.
anybody else coming up? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Another question that was asked a couple of months ago, I think it was in March, had to do with the integrity of the roof, the roofing material on the high school. The person who asked was looking for the material safety data sheet, the information on what the material is, its application. There's been some indication that maybe there's some bubbling on the surface. So I would just ask again, I would just extemporaneously raise out loud the question of the integrity of the roof and the material being used, and wonder out loud if that's in any way a concern as we're moving forward. That's it. And I appreciate your allowing me to ask another, to raise another thought.
So all the information on the roof is on the website.
If you're asking for your own knowledge, there is nothing wrong with the integrity of the roof.
And the MDS sheets, meaning the materials that were used,
MSDS.
has always been on our website.
Okay.
So it's there and it's available,
In the main office.
and in the main office,
Okay.
okay?
For that, thank you.
All right, I'm going to move on. This was a long meeting. Moving on to the board forum. I'll just go around the table. Mrs. McVeigh.
I don't have much to say. I'm glad everybody had a good holiday break. Congratulate the students of the month and the athletic teams, and thanks for coming out tonight.
Ditto to that.
Mr. Williams.
I'm old, I gotta go take my shower. Good night.
But you kind of like.
Mr. Bonnicky.
I have nothing further to add.
Mr. Kaburki.
A suggestion for a superintendent, something that I like to know. I saw pictures of the trip of our senior class at Disney, and they were nice to look at. I was just wondering, what % of our students, in fact, did go to Disney? I'm wondering, like the gentleman said, if it's just those students who come from economic families who can afford it, and we're leaving out many of our students. I'd like to know what % of our students go on the senior trip, what % of our students could afford to go to the prom, what % of our students engage in activities that require a financial commitment from their parents. Just, I don't know why I want to know that, but I do.
I do. Curious minds want to know. Karen.
So to tag on to that, I do know that, and I believe it still occurs, there are many, multiple fundraising efforts that the kids take, and they actually track individually, so there's plenty of opportunities for those less fortunate. And I think there's even some private donations that tend to happen to help other students as well. So it would be great, and I do believe that the vast majority of the seniors are able to participate, but information is always good. That's the reason I do that. So, other than that, thank you all for coming. I do agree with the one individual's comment that said, I think it's good for us to have a discussion, and we've gotten away a bit more from that. So I appreciate everyone's perspectives and input on that. So thank you all, and good night.
Thanks, Karen. The only thing I'd like to say is I'd like to thank President Ernst for addressing tonight the protocol for public forum. As one board member, I support her efforts and her actions, and I appreciate the fact that she has oversight and adherence to board policy because it was well needed. Thank you, President Ernst. I appreciate that. Have a nice evening, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Or, I'm sorry, next month. It will be. Couple weeks.
Yeah. 2 weeks. I don't really have a lot to add. I want to obviously praise our student athletes, our students of the month. They've done a fantastic job. I guess what I would like to do is kind of reiterate what Mrs. Chambers said. It's not easy sitting on this side. There's some decisions that have to be made that are very, very difficult. It's especially hard for people who have been in the field of teaching to have to sit here and look at all aspects. It's also very hard because it's really not in my personality to, really lay down the law. But I appreciate the fact that it was easier to run the meeting tonight, and that is my main responsibility as board president, is to run the meeting, to keep it moving, and to make sure that decorum is upheld at all times. So I appreciate your cooperation with that. All of you drive safely and have a wonderful evening. Can I please have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We're out.